welcome to the BGCP Disassembled Podcast, the official podcast for the Get Big Glasgow comic page, where we talk about the latest comics, movies, television, and other pieces of nerd culture. I'm your host for this episode, Massimo Castelli, and I'm doing it solo this episode because my co-host is nowhere to be found. He's somewhere lost in the ether, but hopefully Alan will be back with us next time we do an interview. But on today's interview special, because we love to do these and they seem to be doing so well on YouTube, we're interviewing Scottish writer and creator whose credits include House of Sweets, Sleeping Dogs, and here to talk about his latest newest Kickstarter collecting all issues of the breakout series Alex Automatic. We are joined today by the fantastic Fraser Campbell.
Hello, how you doing?
Yep, I'm very good, Fraser. How are you yourself?
Not bad, not bad. I'm glad to be here on all that.
Yeah, exactly. Getting an interview in for your new Kickstarter. So, could you maybe tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
A little bit about myself. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Well,
Who you are and what you do?
obviously, I'm on the campaign trail for a new Kickstarter for the collected edition of my latest book. I am a writer from Ayrshire originally, but I now live in Falkirk. I've been writing comics seriously for really only about 5 or 6 years. I started quite late. My background really in writing is sort of radio, comedy, and even theatre. Really, I spent a lot of time sort of writing comedy. Which is probably quite a surprise when you read some of the stuff that I write.
I was going to say it's quite interesting.
Quite dark.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a long and varied. I'm ancient. I've got a quite long and varied writing history, but I've always been a comics fan and a comics collector, as you can probably see in the.
Yeah, I was going to say, see the short boxes.
One of these days, these shelves will collapse and you'll find me buried under comics.
Here lies local man.
But I didn't, and I've sort of dabbled in it from time to time. But really, Sleeping Dogs in 2015-16 was my first serious attempt at doing a proper comic that I felt would be worthy of being on the shelves of a comic book store. So I've been doing it sort of seriously for about 5 or 6 years, and the Kickstarter that we're doing just now is for my very first graphic novel, sort of trade paperback collection of the series that myself and the artist James Corcoran have been doing for the last 5 years, called Alex Automatic.
Mm-hmm. Ah, well, there you go. It's obviously the kind of your magnum opus piece coming at the end here with your first graphic novel.
Well, it feels like it's a kind of culmination of a few years' work. So it's quite satisfying because I enjoy just making comics. As you've seen from the stuff that I do, I do quite a lot of one shots and just sort of done in one stories, because at conventions and stuff like that, I like to be able to give people who are sort of coming along to my stall or whatever a comic that they can take and just get the whole experience in one. But I've also been doing this series for quite a while, so it's nice to be able to collect that, or the story so far anyway, in one volume, and actually have a spine on it and have something that you can actually stick up on the bookshelf. That's going to be really satisfying, I think, when it comes back from the printers. You
get to look at it and you get to have it in all its glory. So you said that you've contributed to kind of BBC radio sketches, sketch shows like Sabotage, and you co-wrote and co-produced 2 plays called Odds and Sods and the Cinderella Boys. So what's the kind of difference in your kind of writing between traditional kind of writing with like sketches and plays, and then actually writing a comic book? What's the kind of difference between those two in different types of media?
Well, I suppose the main ones, and again, this isn't this is just my experience, but the main difference, I suppose, is the level of collaboration. With the sketch shows, you're obviously working with other writers and producers and even performers to actually sort of create the characters and the sketches and all that kind of stuff. So, it's a bit more of a collaborative process in that sense, just to come up with the scripts. Same really with theatre. I co-wrote the 2 plays that I did there, and also sort of co-directed. with a writing partner, Tom Brogan, great mate of mine, and a great play. He's continued to do plays, and a terrific writer. And so, and there it's kind of a collaborative process as well, obviously, because you've got a co-writer, but you're also working with the performers, with the actors to
I was
get
going to say,
the characters and stuff.
it must be different, maybe having to direct someone, and be like, this is how I want the character to be, versus having it written on the page straight away.
Bring that to that. I suppose there are some parallels to comics as well. The comic writing process is more solitary, is really what I'm driving at, I suppose. That you kind of do that, again, unless you are collaborating with another writer or whatever, or you're sort of co-creating it with the artist or whatever. Then, but the scripting process tends to be quite a solitary experience, and then then it becomes collaborative sort of later. That's a bit of a disservice, I suppose, because obviously, usually in my work anyway, if I'm working with an artist, then we've usually talked about what we want to do and how we want to do it, and I've usually worked out an outline with them where I'm looking for them and hoping that they'll contribute their own ideas, just so I can add that in there.
I was going to say, like, do you give like a lot of guidance towards them, or is it a lot of that thing of like, if they suggest something, you can like maybe flip your story up a little bit, you can change what you've written?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it honestly depends who you're working with. I mean, with some of the artists that I work with, and creators, and again, it doesn't really just stop with the artists. The colorists and the letterers all have a wee say in what would be best for the aspects they contribute. But yeah, generally speaking, with the artists, it really depends on how they like to work.
Mm-hmm.
I like to try and make them feel they're doing the heavy lifting with the I mean, I'm not saying it's easy to write a script, but it's certainly easier than having to draw 30, 40 pages of a comic book, much less time consuming at the very least. And so obviously I try and make it as easy as I can for the artists that I work with by trying to see how they like to work and then trying to adapt to that. So if somebody likes things very meticulously scripted and really just likes that to be presented to them that they can then follow, I'll usually ask them to sort of contribute at the outline stage and let me know what their thoughts are on characters, on storylines and stuff like that. Or if they're quite reticent to do that, I'll make suggestions and make sure they're okay with it before I go to the script. With other artists, particularly the work that I've done with Ian Laurie, who in his own right is an excellent writer as well as being a terrific artist, that tends to be much more collaborative throughout the whole process. I mean, I'll be me that actually sits down and writes the script, but there's much more input in the story on the work that I do with Ian, from Ian, and he'll, again, we've been mates for a long time, so if he changes something actually in the, he just like, there's one page in House of Sweets where he just basically went, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do this instead.
So that's,
and I was like, yeah, okay.
So do you feel like as you build like that creative bond and relationship with like a creative team, like whether that be kind of letterers or kind of artists, that you feel like they're more, they feel like they can give more of a almost like a criticism on your work? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to do this, but I'll do this.
Yeah, well, it's just like kind of. I mean, it can be as simple as you've written a gun here. I don't like drawing guns. Just
I'm better at knives.
Going, right, okay. Well, so I have to think. Right, well, how does that affect the rest of the story? Does it work? If yes, then cool, we can go with it. If not, then I might need to make some adjustments, or I might need to go. Could we just make it a gun and just do it? Do it the easiest way. Yeah, do you know what I mean? You get a wee bit of give and take there. I mean, I'm happy to come and go with anybody that I'm working with. I'm really, I'm really quite happy to modify what I'm doing or make changes and stuff like that. I'm not married to anything in the first draft, but or if I am, I'll say so. Like, I really like this bit, so we're not changing it. But no, usually I'll be open to whatever the artist suggests, because like I say, they have to interpret what I'm doing and make a decision of whether or not they feel it'll work visually. because I don't. Unfortunately, I'm my name is
Stickmen.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Stickmen's a compliment style. So, if you could make out they were men, that would be brilliant.
Exactly, stick things.
So as I say, I don't really feel qualified when I write a panel description, for example. I might write something. I've visualised it and I think it will work. But if an artist tells me this will work better, then I'll be like, you're the gaffer there. So we'll do it that way.
So obviously on like a book like Alex Automatic, you've kind of been working with the same creative team over the years, and you've only just started to. Obviously, you've been kickstarting it, so each issue's had like a Kickstarter behind it, like the first like 5 issues of it. But you've only just decided to kind of get the first volume of Alex's story into like a volume 1 situation where it's like a whole Kickstarter for the whole thing. Why now? Why is it like decided to do that now?
Well, because volume 1's finished.
Okay.
Basically, because we've reached a sort of natural point where the first maybe
Arc,
the
yeah.
third of the story, I guess, is done, and we're now ready to move into the next phase of the story. So I just felt it was a good time to collect it, and also it's now getting to the point where if we do a trade paperback collection, which we're doing, we're at a stage where we can't really wait any longer because it'll then just be too big.
Yep.
As it is, the book is topping out at I think about 228 pages.
I saw that on a Kickstarter page. I was quite yeah.
Yeah, it's a chunky volume. So we're just skirting. When you're doing Kickstarters, you have to think about weird things like not bankrupting yourself. So we're just skirting the edge of the postage costs, going from 750 grams to over that, which then bumps up the price of postage by really quite a lot.
Yeah, so these weird, like, kind of like methodical, kind of logical things you've got to think about. It's just
well, that's it. You just got. Honestly, I know the post office pricing structures in a way that I never thought I would be so intimate. You really have to know because. Honestly, you'll take stuff down to the post office and staff will argue with you. And I honestly, because a lot of post offices now are actually counters at other stores.
Yeah.
You maybe have staff there who aren't.
You're able to cite the you're able to cite the post office rules and regulations. Yeah, exactly.
I've got my PDF here.
Exactly, I can point exactly what it is. So
because it can Kickstarter, if you sell a few hundred copies of something and you get the postage wrong, it can cost you a lot of money.
But has Kickstarter been like kind of helpful in getting a lot of your work off the ground? Because I've noticed that a lot of your a lot of your comics so far have been Kickstarters.
Yeah, well, I mean, Kickstarters basically allow you to they really allow you just to make comics. If you're starting from scratch, really. If you want to make a comic book and you want to do it properly and you want to pay the people that are involved, or at the very least, if it's a kind of partnership between, say, you and the artist, you're either paying everybody a page rate, or there are occasions where that myself and James will just kind of equal partners in any money that is made, kind of thing. So James doesn't take a page rate for Alex Automatic, but we split whatever money's made, but we do pay everybody. Everybody else is paid a rate because they're not sort of subject to that agreement. So yeah, it costs a lot of money. Is basically what I'm waffling around to make a comic book. I self-funded Sleeping Dogs, which was my first comic, and that. Even back then, 5 or 6 years ago, that cost me about £3,500 to make and print up a couple of hundred copies of. Which that's so I can't. I mean, I've got a job and stuff like that. Like most comic creators, I've got a sort of square job, if you like, I could theoretically save up my own money to make more comics. But it makes sense to me to go to the audience and basically go, can you front up the money for this, basically? And then I'll make it, and then you'll get it, and Bob's your uncle, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Because basically it means that the money that you're spending to make the comic, you're kind of recouping that so you can make the next one.
Yeah, so it's kind of almost like, in the weirdest way, kind of almost cash in hand situation. Like you're kind of going from kind of comic to comic, like going through your ideas and kind of producing it based off the previous one.
That's basically it, and basically so it's kind of precarious in as much as one spectacular failure means that's me probably wiped out and not able to make comics anymore. But thankfully, after this is now my 10th Kickstarter, people have sort of followed along and have sort of backed me to the extent where I'm in a position to to sort of keep going and just sort of gradually build the sort of reputation of the stuff that I do. And we've got a wee bit of an audience now, so that's it seems to me there's just enough people interested in the stuff that I do just to keep churning 1 or 2 books out a year.
So yeah, I was going to say, when you kind of say you had that kind of loyal following and stuff, that Alex Automatic it's already met it's quite close to its Kickstarter goal, isn't it? Or it's...
Yeah, well, that which is a bit of a surprise because obviously with a book, the target's usually about £1,800 just to sort of pay base costs, printing costs, and paying everybody, paying Dave the colorist and paying Haas for lettering and the various wee bits and bobs, paying whoever's doing pin-ups or whatever. So once you put all that together, it's usually a couple of grand. And the usual target you go for with a single issue is with that in mind. However, obviously with this being the collected edition, and as we've said, quite a chunky boy, the costs that the total that we're looking for is quite high. We were looking for about £6,000. Most of that will be printing costs.
Yeah, it's just actually making the book and stuff like that rather than paying off.
The remainder will be shipping. Because your shipping's built into your Kickstarter total.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if you could keep it separate, but they don't want you to do that. So that's
fair enough.
That's the way that works. So yeah, much bigger target than usual, and we're I think nearly was at about 80%.
Yeah, you're fairly close.
Days. It's the usual though. I mean, it started off spectacularly well. Loads and loads of people backing it on the first day, and we're now in that sort of post first day.
It's that lull.
Weird kind of feeling of it's you get swept along in the first day. If you've never done a Kickstarter before, it's a wild ride because you get swept along in what's happening on the first day. Hopefully, if you're lucky, you'll make a decent total on the first day, and then for the rest of the campaign, you're just kind of eking it out, and then there's a wee, there's usually a wee burst towards the end. Again, if you're lucky, and hopefully you'll get your target. So as I say, it's looking good. It's looking good. The reason why we went for one of the other reasons why we went for a big total this time was basically to give us something to keep the promotional impetus going. Because we figured I figured if we ask for a decent total, then we won't make it on the first day. Quite often the Kickstarters I've done have made it on the first day. And that's great, because it takes a lot of worry off your shoulders. But it kind of kills the impetus of the campaign.
It leaves you less recuperation time to get more kind of cost done. Maybe you can make the book better or kind of get more of that. Yeah, more people kind of backing it and stuff.
Yeah, you have to try and figure out ways to keep the campaign going if you make your total early with what's known as stretch goals. And offer extras or try and find new ways to entice people.
Different incentives,
They're not necessarily going to back you because you need them to back you. I suppose there's different schools of thought depending on who you are about whether or not making your total early is a good or a bad thing in terms of marketing your campaign. It's always good to have to make the total.
Well, I think I was going to say I think that Alex Automatic. I hope it hits its total quite soon because. The first 5 issues, obviously, in the kind of the first volume is fantastic, and obviously that's what the kind of main thing you're on here to talk about. So, with that kind of being said, how does the idea of someone who's so psychologically damaged, thinking that they're a 70s super spy like Alex Automatic, come about? Like, does that kind of gestate from your brain? Has that been something you've been writing around, or just come to you? Like, how does that character come around? Someone kind of
That's an
deeply
interesting
disturbed?
one, yeah. That's, well, how does a cycle, the
Yeah.
cycle damage is on me, obviously. So well, the sort of genesis of Alex Automatic was after I did Sleeping Dogs, James, who I was already a fan of, he'd done some comics work already, sort of messaged me on Twitter. He's since left Twitter because he doesn't really like it. But he occasionally jumps back on. But I think he just finds it just too manic. Anyway, but he'd messaged me and said, do you fancy working on something? I'm going, yeah, do you have any ideas? And he just sent me a couple of pictures. I've got this kind of robot man kind of thing, about a guy who thinks he's a robot. And I'm like, right, okay. And I'm kind of, okay.
Great premise, just great pitch.
How do you want to? Yeah, I mean, but the thing, yeah, I mean that was the thing. I don't think he really was very confident about it. I didn't really have very much flesh on those bones, kind of thing. Or circuitry, if you like.
There you go.
So I went away. We had a chat about, where do you want it to come from? And we talked about The Prisoner and the old sort of Jerry Anderson shows that we watched when we were kids. Me and James are both of a vintage.
Kind of Bionic Man and all that kind of stuff, like.
Yeah, the Bionic Man and all these sort of, fun sort of day glow, sort of glitzy spy espionage or adventure shows. Where it was just unquestionably good guys versus unquestionably
There was no grey area, no moral.
Unambiguous good and evil kind of thing. Not obviously we don't really have stories like that anymore. So the challenge for me then was to try and put that in a context that wasn't just a sort of hokey homage to because you could just do a kind of version of it that's basically a kind of grown up Joe 90. So as I say, I came up with the idea of him sort of having these delusions where he thinks he's a sort of 70s super spy in a TV show, and that having that sort of delusion being implanted to make him more efficient in missions.
Well, that's
to kind of switch off his conscience and all that kind of stuff.
That's something interesting that I'm obviously reading throughout. Like I wasn't super familiar with your work beforehand, but I was kind of hooked when I started reading it, and it was the idea that Alex is a character who's kind of trying to break through his brainwashing program. However, kind of each issue, you kind of see how his mind has fabricated some events, and some of the events are like kind of real.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where did the kind of plot device, like, because obviously in the first issue or the first few issues and all of them, like it splits. Like almost like it's like a fragmented mind. Like, where did that kind of plot device kind of come from? Like, I obviously kind of mentioned that you kind of had to come up with something that wasn't exactly like the classic super spy stuff. Did that just kind of naturally fall in that you realised you wanted to make something that was almost something that's like a commentary on it rather than something that's a homage or a parody?
Yeah, well, yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, the idea behind it was just to make it interesting and just to make it interesting for me to write. I wanted it to be somewhere where I could talk about alienation and disassociation and just feeling sort of unmoored and a bit lost in the modern world.
Yeah,
and just that sort of feeling of of sort of unreality that I think a lot of us live in, because we spend a lot of time on the net and we spend a lot of time having sort of experiences that are unique to the net. But
like I say, I feel like it's definitely something that's almost heightened now.
Yeah,
with everything that's happened recently.
Last year, the lockdown. Yeah. I mean, all the stuff that obviously there's been a lot of focus on things like online abuse and sport and things like that lately.
Yeah, recently, yeah.
People are starting to realise that life on the internet isn't real, doesn't have the same consequences as it's different from real life.
It
affects your mind and it affects the way you feel in real life, kind of thing. So it just just allowed me to talk about stuff like that and just get that in there. So the device of having Alex trying to break, like you say, trying to pull his mind back together, trying to break through the layers of programming and the layers of experimentation that have been done on him. but occasionally, something triggers them into one of the
Yeah.
delusions. It's just, like I say, it's a fun plot device. It allows you to switch into, sort of cool looking Dago
Visuals,
adventures
yeah.
with cool gadgets and crazy monsters and
That's
weird,
something.
weird sort of machines and stuff like that, and weird gadgets. But reality is always kind
Yeah.
of lurking in the wings.
I was gonna say that's something you play with a lot, is the idea of almost like you swap kind of genres, you swap styles, especially in those kind of last two issues, which I'm not going to spoil because I really want people kind of to read it for themselves, because trying to explain it would be a disservice to the book. But like the way in which obviously you can almost kind of swap between kind of almost genres at the same time is like the way the comic's drawn as well is a big part of that. Like it swaps between kind of glorified 70s super spy to like murky reality kind of setting in is like a very like you could have like it could have been a big thing where you could have missed the mark with that, but you've hit it spot on with the way you've done it. Because
That's good.
yeah. Oh, for me personally, I've been reading a bunch of your stuff, obviously, in kind of preparation for the interview, as I said at the start of this. But yeah, it seems to be that thing of like Alex Automatic kind of serves as almost a commentary itself on modern comics as well as kind of modern life.
That to an extent, because you can. The good thing about Alex being delusional and having these psychological episodes where he thinks he's somebody else, is you can theoretically put him anywhere.
Yeah.
So we've had him in some story. There's a couple of wee bits and bobs in the collected edition that aren't in the main comic. One of those is a kind of western kind of thing.
Oof, love it.
And to be fair, that's something that we kind of stole from The Prisoner, the old Patrick McGoon TV show. That your younger listeners will not be familiar with, probably, but your older ones might be. Well worth watching if you ever get the chance, and you haven't, But anyways, yeah, there's an episode where he gets sort of put in a kind of western scenario, and it's a kind of similar kind of thing where they're just trying to sort of break his resistance by putting him in these sort of fake situations. So yeah, you can basically. I mean, one of them, after the first issue, I asked James what he wanted to do next, and he was like, where do we want to take James next? And he was looking at jungle adventure. So we did the sort of jungle adventure edition with him in the safari shirt and everything like that.
But then
So
it kind of splits in the middle of the issue to kind of what he's like real life is, and you have the
but he's getting chased by in real life. He's trying to lie low, having escaped and pull together, pull himself together psychologically and just get some space to take in what's happened to him and figure out what to do next. However, people discover him and chase him.
I feel like
he's being chased, that triggers an episode, and he ends up imagining that he's in this jungle adventure.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's quite an interesting thing of like the thing about the story is that it doesn't start from the beginning, if that makes sense. Like it definitely kind of jumps around, and I kept thinking to myself, it's almost very Tarantino-esque in its storytelling, and the idea that not everything's in the right order, but it makes sense at the end. So like,
it will do. I promise.
It does. Exactly. It makes sense by the time you get to the end of it. But
that's the thing. That's the problem. I think if you read the issues in isolation, if you read the first issue, then that would be fine.
Yeah.
But if you read 2 or 3 sequence, they really they are a serial, so they really need to be read one after the other. And you're right. There's quite a lot of time jumping involved. There's obviously the 4 and 5 double issue that we did last year fills in quite a lot of the gaps.
I was gonna say
from Alex's past.
It's
but also has a wee peek into his
future and also the present as well going on. Like it's confusing, but in the best possible way. Like
it's supposed to be. I mean, at the end of the day, a spy adventure should be kind of perplexing until the end.
Exactly.
You're supposed to be perplexed. So is the protagonist, because it's like evil forces are trying to stop him achieving his goals. So it's that's the point. So there is an element where we're sort of playing with that stereotype of the perplexing mystery. Means what actually happened to Alex, whether or not he has a past to go back to, and
Yeah.
you know, who some of these people who are, you know, trying to sort of capture them or stop them or kill them, what their motivations
Like
are and all that.
there's, as you said, there's like almost as an antithesis to the kind of the spy shows of old, there is a moral grey area. Like a lot of the characters exist in this ground of their motivations are super unclear, you
Yeah.
know, and
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll start to get
yeah,
as the story goes on, we'll start to
yeah,
see a lot of that. But as usual with spy stories, there are people who you
double
think are
agents, triple A.
one side. Well, that's it. There are people who are one side who, you know, you're going to find out that they're going to flip round totally,
Yeah,
or, you know, are they going to flip in the way you think?
yeah,
You know, whose loyalties are where, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, again, that's all sort of part. You know, all those elements I think have to be in a spy story, or have to be in a kind of espionage story.
yeah.
But it's what you do with them and the kind of fun that you have with them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think the first volume, as I say, it just kind of it starts off obviously as a story about a guy who has been experimented on. These two journalists break him out of this secure facility, thinking they're getting a great story, and that they're helping free an innocent man, and they realise too late that they have unleashed this sort of force of nature
Yeah.
who doesn't really know what he's doing.
Neither good nor bad, and it's
Yeah, and gradually begins to grasp himself. But by
yeah.
the time he's done that, he's
Yeah.
he's havoc.
Yeah.
So it's interesting from that perspective. It's a story about a guy trying to pull his mind
Pull his
back
life together, yeah.
trying to find out, trying to find out who's done whatever it is to them, trying to find out who, or trying to keep away from the people who are trying to recapture them. But ultimately, I mean, it's just a kind of a little guy versus the big machine
That's
kind of
it.
story. A fairly typical story in that sense.
So, obviously, like in the third issue, because I don't want to spoil this too much, but in the third issue, there is a special guest appearance from a fellow comics writer.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Michael Finney, who recently smashed his Kickstarter goal for his book of the same coin, which you can find in a review available from the website.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there like a close knit like community between kind of Scottish comic book writers that leads you guys to make fun of each other and have like cameos in your books, even if it's like a small character like that appears in a dream sequence? Is that like?
Michael is my nephew.
There we go. Nice.
And Michael actually backed a level in the Kickstarter to be in. So I wrote him into the book, and he was came to a sticky end, unfortunately. But I don't think I'm giving too much away there.
Nah.
Basically, there are when we're doing a Kickstarter, we do offer the chance to be in the next issue. So you can pay to be in, have your name and likeness in the next issue. However, you will probably be brutally murdered. That's and we do say that before anybody thinks they're going to be an ongoing character. Something bad is going to happen to you. So if that tickles you, then you can usually in normal issues you can pay to be in the episode. And Mike did. This was obviously a couple of years before he turned his hand to Of the Same Coin, which obviously is a terrific book. I just got my copy of it the other day. Mm-hmm. I have it right here.
Yeah, there's a review available on the BGCP website of it, and I got a chance to read it because the person who was reviewing it managed to give me their copy, and I really enjoyed it.
Great stuff. It really reminded me of given the fact that the nation's going crazy for Line of Duty at the moment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was gonna say really perfect time.
Good old British cop drama vibe to it. It reminded me again being of a vintage. Reminded me of sort of classic Sweeney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Professionals and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it, and I was super proud of him because I've watched a lad grow up, and he's turned into a great young man and a talented comic book creator to boot.
Yeah, it was great, and I feel like it must have a special kind of place that you have him technically in one of your comics. So you think he's going to repay you the favour?
you were right to suggest there was a connection, but it's
Yeah.
actually I am his uncle.
There you go. Are you gonna get? Do you think he's gonna write you into an issue of the same coin? You think you'll get the favour returned to you?
He might get me back for issue 3. Yeah, you never know. You need to ask him about that.
There we go. Yeah. Hopefully we can.
Not, but,
Maybe we'll have him on to promote his Kickstarter at some point.
I'm sure if he does, I'll be brutally killed.
Yeah, just shot into bits and maybe stabbed a bunch as well.
Yeah, I think I might meet a sticky end. Yeah.
So with obviously kind of most of your work, you've avoided writing classic superhero comic stories. Is there a kind of particular reason for that?
I think doing a good superhero story is probably the hardest thing left to do in comics.
It must be.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's so hard to come up with a unique angle, isn't it? With a superhero story, everybody's done one. I've got one in the locker.
Oh.
That may see the light of day at some point. However, at the minute, it's just a flesh. It's quite fleshed out, but it hasn't been scripted. It's quite a sort of detailed pitch.
Is it? I don't want to press too much about it, obviously, because it's a detailed pitch. Is it a Scottish superhero by chance?
It's British. It's not Scottish exclusively. Although I have made the big bad Scottish.
Love it. It's good.
Because nobody kicks ass like a Scot.
Scotsman. That's it.
So yes, it's the big bad who is awful as a Scot.
I love that.
It's singularly evil. But So like I say, I have one that I think is a strong idea, but it's way down the line for actually being seen the light of day. I think it's hard to do superhero comics.
Yeah,
get a unique spin on the genre, keeping it interesting, not treading old ground. Very difficult. Very difficult. I've seen a lot of people. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people a lot of very talented writers in mainstream comics try and don't fail as such, but there's not a lot of new ground broken and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's I'm struggling to think of a really good sort of twist on a superhero story.
I'd say most recent
Invincible, really.
Yeah, I was going to say Invincible was kind of my go-to one. That was
that's the last time. I mean, and to be honest, Invincible, when did that start coming out? About 12 years ago.
Yeah, I mean they've obviously just adapted it to an animated show on Amazon, so like it's starting to see more and more popularity.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, which is good because that poor Robert Kirkman needs more money. Poor guy, must be skint.
I know, right? What's his little one, The Walking Dead? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I don't think that did very well.
I don't think it did.
Yeah, so I think he'll be okay. It's nice to see his future secured.
I know, right?
But yeah, I mean, well, fair play to him because he did, like I say, he came up with a really sort of fun spin on a legacy comic book story, a superhero story, which was a difficult thing to do.
Yeah,
I think the problem with a lot of mainstream comics. I see the problem with a lot of mainstream comics. I love them. I've got literally stacks of them just sitting next to me.
Oh, trust me, I'm the same. I've got my stuff next to me.
I'm literally surrounded by the things. I love them, but the problem with ongoing, the stories are never ending.
Yeah.
The stories are ongoing, so they're soap operas, really. But it's very difficult, which is why the best and most memorable superhero stories, the best Batman stories, the best Superman stories,
are
usually sort of either Elseworldy kind of things or.
Oh yeah.
They've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. They're not. It's very difficult to pick out individual runs of comics that were excellent from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Hellblazer.
Well, Hellblazer I wouldn't really count as a superhero story, I suppose. But again, it depends on whose run you're talking about.
I guess very 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 true. I
mean, I think there's Hellblazer's had 2 or 3 great runs.
Yeah.
And the last one I really enjoyed, Simon Spurrier's, the one that he wrote with a couple of artists sort of tag team in the artwork. I thought that was a brilliant one. I was gutted when that got cancelled at 12 issues. That was a bad decision from DC for me.
There's been several of those over the past few years.
But yeah, I wouldn't really count that as that. That's always been a Vertigo book for me.
Fair enough. I mean, for me personally, like, and I feel like if we're talking about kind of, for me personally, mainstream comic book, for people who've kind of broken through that mainstream into that mainstream from indie, is Alex Patnadel, who we had as a guest on our podcast previously, and who his book Turncoat and also his kind of ongoing series Geiger is like one of my kind of favorite stuff to read at the moment. He has a written forward at the start of the volume. Am I correct in saying that?
Alex, he hasn't given it to me yet, but he has agreed to do the forward.
There you go. I was going to say...
Alex has been a terrific supporter of me and of Alex since I met him in Thought Bubble in, I think, 2016, my very first Thought Bubble, where again I have to give thanks to my good pal John Lees, who basically forced me to come and share the table with him to sell my book. I was too nervous to do it. I was just going to go as a punter with a few books in my bag to give to people, and then just embarrassedly hurry away.
Just like scurry at
he made me come and actually set up shop, and basically showed me the ropes on how to sell books to punters at conventions and stuff like that. So I have to say a big thanks to him. Alex was one of the guys who took a chance on the book, got friendly with him over the course of the weekend, and he's been a great supporter ever since. Really, really cool guy, great writer.
Is there any chance we could see maybe a collaboration between you two in the future? Because I've enjoyed both your works, and I think it would be great.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think about Alex being several rungs in the ladder ahead of me. That would be for him to answer, because he'd be throwing the ladder down if that was to happen. But I would certainly be well up for that. As I say, I've been a fan of his work since the first thing I saw of his was Arcadia.
Yeah, Arcadia's great. Yeah.
Which I read and immediately thought was brilliant. A great premise, really, really well done. Nice sort of stark science fiction story with a really clever premise. Big idea, which I really like in comics. I think one of the things that I see quite a lot in modern comics is people sort of doing different kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And focusing on things like relationships and just love stories, romance stories, and doing different kinds of comics, which I think is absolutely fine. But one of the things I really love in comics is big ideas, big sort of big futurist ideas.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, having a look at not just the way we live now, which is fine and perfectly valid if that's the kind of comics you want to make. But I really like looking at how we're going to live in the future, and and those kind of, and just sort of tackling those big notions and those big challenges that sort of lie ahead for humanity. I suppose that's where science fiction stuff, comics is at its best, I think.
And I feel like it's definitely something that you can say a testament to Alex's work, and even your own, in a lot of the way of having these kind of stories where, although that someone like Alex Automatic is this kind of weird brainwashed super spy, that it is a lot focused on about uncovering this conspiracy, but also about the relationships he has with the people in his life and how they've kind of begun to form again after getting back his memory, and also completely degrade and go to the side.
Yeah. Well, that's that. Yeah, that's that. I mean, you have to, all decent writing, and that's not to sort of say anything I write is good. That's for a but all stems from character. It's like in the interaction between the characters. You can have the best idea in the world and the most the coolest big idea, but if your characters are two-dimensional, then
what's the point?
And it'll be really boring. So yeah, it's all about the relationships between the characters, their interactions, and how the characters grow and build throughout the story. Obviously, every character and every story has an objective. They all have goals, and depending on the kind of story that you do, they either achieve those goals if it's a kind of if it's to be a happy ending, or they don't if it's to be a tragedy, or it can be a mixture of the two if it's a kind of bittersweet thing, which I suppose is my
Yeah,
Is,
your
is
kind of
my
thing.
kind of trademark a sort of bittersweet kind of ending, or the sort of ambiguous Donnie Darko ending?
Yeah,
I
kind
suppose
of.
that's where I go with my horror stuff usually. But a lot of the stuff that I do also has a wee bit of a sort of bittersweet flavour, indexed and Sleeping Dogs. The end of Sleeping Dogs is quite sort of bittersweet, I suppose.
So kind
But
of.
sorry.
So kind of speaking of kind of the end of things, obviously that tagline throughout all of Alex Automatic is this the end of Alex Automatic Super Spy? So the real question is this first volume, is this the end
Oh,
for Alex Automatic?
it's certainly not the end. No, there's at least going to be another volume, probably more. What I've set up, and there's a short story within the volume, an exclusive short story that you won't get anywhere else, that actually sets up the next arc. And we're setting up the arc in a way that it kind of expands on the real adversary that Alex is now going to face in the kind of traditional good versus evil kind of battle, if you like. However, the way that sort of battle is going to manifest itself is going to be, a typically sort of wild and crazy psychological ride. There's at least another volume there, and as I say, the way we've set it up in that sort of classic Alex Automatic sort of style where we can really take Alex anywhere and put him anywhere, and what he's experiencing and what he's doing has a bearing on what's happening in real life, but it may or may not actually be what's happening.
More psychological torment for the main character. It's always
More
great.
delusions, more day glow adventures against giant robotic tarantula and stuff like that. But like we always say, reality's waiting in the wings
That's
as well.
it. So I think that's just kind of finished. I've kind of battered through all the questions that I kind of wanted to ask you. So before you go and before we kind of sign off to listeners, is there anything else that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to plug?
Well, one of the other things that I'm doing just now, there's a couple of other things that you might see the light of day this year.
Great.
One of those is also with Alex, with James. Sorry, Alex on the brain here. With James Corcoran, and that is a wee kind of a sort of gap year holiday comic, if you like, before we start the second volume of Alex Automatic. And this is going to be a sort of one shot, sort of vampire comic.
Oh, I love it.
Called Van Helsing 58, and it's set in 1958 and features a young descendant of the Van Helsing line who doesn't want to be a monster hunter or a vampire hunter. However,
Gets dragged into it.
Is just unable to sort of escape his destiny and gets pulled into this sort of mystery set in late 50s Paris, just about the time when the sort of new wave cinema craze is
I love that. That sounds great.
And so it's like kind of old world versus new world kind of story, and that's going to be a one shot. And we'll hopefully have that out maybe towards the end of the year.
That sounds great.
The other thing that I'm doing just now is with an artist called Alfie Gallagher, and it's a fantasy one shot. Again, these are quite chunky one shots though. The Van Helsing 58 is going to be 48 pages.
Nice.
And
Bang for your buck.
Star-Crossed is at least 64. I have to say a great thanks to Alfie actually, because I promised him I would do it in 48 pages and I ended up being 64, and I'm like, I'm really sorry. You can't really do a fantasy comic without big splash pages.
I was going to say those kind of big two-piece kind of big art pieces.
It was his fault. He asked for a fantasy.
Exactly. Blame the artist.
That's called Star-Crossed, and it's about two sort of workaday friends who sort of know each other from where they work and stuff like that, and they're kind of nerdy, and they don't really have many other friends, and they kind of have this relationship that's very precious to them, but it's also not 100% healthy because they both rely on each other too much. But they kind of
codependent
in different ways. They somehow get pulled into this fantasy world through a dimensional portal, and one of them gets told that he is the sort of
the chosen one kind of thing,
chosen one savior, and it's about how that affects their relationship.
Well, those
and whether or not whether or not they actually physically survive, and whether or not their relationship survives the story.
Well, those both sound great. Like, those both sound like absolutely fantastic books. So, obviously, just before we kind of go, where can people find the Kickstarter? What is the specific name of the Kickstarter? Is it just Alex Automatic Volume 1?
Yeah, just if you have a search for Alex Automatic Volume 1 trade paperback, you'll find it. The Kickstarter URL is kickstarter.com/projects/Fraser Campbell /Alex Automatic Volume 1 trade paperback. But yeah, just go to Kickstarter and look for Alex Automatic Volume 1 and you should find it. Or alternatively, follow me on Twitter at FraserC69, and I am endlessly banging on about it, so you'll find a URL there, no problem.
Well, that sounds great. Well, thank you for joining us, Fraser. I'd like to obviously thank you, and obviously if you want to go have a fun, check out a fun spy story, you can look for Alex Automatic on Kickstarter. If you'd like to like, subscribe, and also follow and smash the bell in the description and comments below of this video, it'd be great as always for those kind of new to the channel. You can find us on Twitter at BGCP and also on Facebook with the same name, the Big Glasgow Comic Page. So for all those listening, have a great week, a great day, and everything else. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Disassembled. You can find more news and reviews on BigGlasgowComicPage.com. And don't forget, you can also find us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube as BGCP Comic Con. Make sure you also subscribe on your podcast provider of choice for new episodes every week.